He was just another recruit until the drill sergeant tore into him in front of the entire company, stripping him down with words meant to break. But when the young soldier reached into his pocket and pulled out a taped-edge photograph, the entire base seemed to stop. Names inked on the back tied generations together, and even the hardest man on the field went silent. What could one old picture reveal that no amount of orders or punishment could erase? This isn't just a story of training, it's about memory, respect, and the moment silence rewrote the rules. Would you have dared to show it? The post wakes before the town. The horizon is not yet decided between dark and gray. When the first keys turn in the company office door, metal teeth scrape against a lock that has known 1,000 mornings. Each identical, each written into the brass, until the motion feels rehearsed rather than chosen. The door opens to air that still holds yesterday. Inside, fluorescent tubes flicker, hesitate, then burn steady. Their light spills across waxed floors. Bulletin boards layered with orders that expired weeks ago, and a clock that seems too certain for the hour it claims. The duty NCO sets a cap on the desk, checks the frame on the wall, unit guidance squared, glass clean, and breathes once before beginning. The logbook waits where it always does, a green-bound volume with pages lined to receive history in inches rather than paragraphs. Its cover curls at the corners. Its spine carries the oil of hands that have flipped it through months of sameness. The pen beside it is tethered by a cord, though no one has thought to steal it. He sits, straightens the volume with both palms, and opens to a fresh page. Top line, date. He writes in block letters, steady from practice. Each stroke deliberate enough to withstand inspection. Next, time 5 o'clock, though the minute hand wavers between obligation and truth. Initials 3 letters, pressed hard enough to leave faint impressions on the page beneath. Last weather. A pause follows, because the field outside offers no certainty. Fog lies at knee height across the drill pad, moving as though pulled by the breath of something larger. He writes 2 words, light fog, and underlines them once. The room absorbs the entry as if it were a prayer. The duty NCO flips back a page and sees yesterday stacked in ink. Chow delivery received. Latrine inspection completed. 1 recruit late to formation. Counseling noted. Lines march neatly, each initial beside them like a footprint. This morning's line joins them, modest but binding. Beyond the office walls, barracks stir. Bunks creak as bodies shift from uneasy sleep to posture. A cough travels the length of a bay and becomes a signal rather than a symptom. Boots hit concrete in uneven rhythm, each pair correcting the last until the noise aligns. A bugle does not sound here. Reveille is lived rather than played. The NCO caps the pen, flips the book closed, and sets it at the desk's exact center. He checks the roster pinned to the wall, names typed but memorized by face and gait. A clipboard leans in the corner, waiting for its first mark. The coffee pot gurgles behind him, burnt smell before taste. He pours half a cup, black, and leaves it untouched. Regulations permit caffeine. They do not account for appetite. Outside, fog crawls against the asphalt of the motor pool. Tailgates are lined, neat, tires squared to chalk marks. Beyond them, a flag waits in darkness, fabric still as if withholding until signaled. A single lamppost hums, light slicing fog into measured segments. Back inside, the NCO pulls open a file drawer, counseling forms, training schedules, safety briefs stacked in folders stamped with a company crest. The first sergeant will expect updates already in motion. He checks the wall clock again, though only 3 minutes have passed. Time is a drill here too. Count, report, repeat. The logbook rests on the desk. Its new line already older than the moment that birthed it. Ink dries, binding the post to routine. Date, time, initials. Weather, light fog. The kind of entry that seems small, but becomes proof later that someone was awake. Someone measured. Someone wrote when most of the town was still asleep. The NCO lifts his cap, checks the crease in the brim with 1 finger, and steps back into the corridor, where recruits now form shadows in rows. Behind him, the fluorescents hum steady. The logbook holds its truth, and the day, like the page, has only just begun. The barracks wake, the way machines wake, first with sound, then with movement, and only later with meaning. The fluorescent strips along the ceiling hum into brightness, swallowing shadows that had stretched long and private. Beds become rectangles again, sheets white and hard-edged, blankets folded into corners sharp enough to survive a coin test. A draft slips through a half-open window, catching dust motes that circle like tiny sentries before fading into the light. The first noise is boots striking concrete, not all at once, not in rhythm yet, but enough to turn the air from stillness into arithmetic. 1 bunk, then another, then 5 more. Each thump is corrected by the next, until the room decides on order. Dog tags rattle against sternums. Their sound thin and metallic, an unintentional chorus. Water pipes complain in the walls, as faucets twist open, gurgle, and yield what they are commanded. Down the bay, lines dictate behavior before voices do. A red stripe painted into the floor cuts the space lengthwise, dividing bunks from the aisle. Recruits step to it, but not over, respecting a boundary as firm as law, though born of latex paint. Boots line heel to wall beneath the frames. Black leather dulled from scrubbing, not polish. Above them, lockers wait with open mouths. Contents arranged in geometries stricter than mathematics. Socks rolled exact. Shirts folded edge to edge. Covers squared like unissued bricks. One recruit bends to lace a boot twice. Each loop pulled tighter, until it holds the kind of knot that resists inspection fingers. He glances once at the red line, measuring his distance without needing to think. His shadow runs parallel to it, long from the angle of light, as though even in silhouette the rule cannot be crossed. Another recruit pauses to fold a blanket again, not because it is wrong, but because it is safer to assume it might be. Cotton yields under his palms, creasing where dozens of hands have taught it the habit. The air smells of wax from the floor, and starch from uniforms. There is also soap, faint but everywhere, clinging to hands, razors, towels, drains. Steam rises uneven from the latrine door, fogging the hallway mirror that will soon judge whether chins are smooth enough. Voices do not rise above a murmur. A throat clears. A cough answers. But speech waits until permission comes. A drill sergeant's footsteps echo before he arrives. The sound is unmistakable. Heels set deliberate. Weight carried like punctuation. Recruits freeze in motion without being told. Laces pause, half-tied toothbrushes still in mouths. Towels gripped mid. Eyes flick to the line on the floor. 2 lockers aligned. 2 boots aligned. To anything that might absorb scrutiny first. He enters with brim squared, clipboard in hand, and posture that does not seek attention, but commands it anyway. His gaze sweeps once, quick as a scan, then lingers where blankets hesitate or boots fail to shine. A finger runs along the locker edge and comes back clean. He does not comment. Silence itself serves as commentary. He checks the clipboard, flips a page, and marks something with the casual certainty of someone who knows his words will outlive the morning. The recruits resume motion only when his steps recede. Toothbrushes finish their circuits. Belts slide into loops. Laces tighten with final pulls. Each man checks his spacing against the next, shoulders angled to keep even. The red line gleams faintly under the fluorescent hum, its paint worn by years of compliance. Its edge still crisp enough to remind everyone that even boundaries painted thin can carry authority. Outside, the fog still presses against windows, muting the parade field into nothing more than a pale square. Inside, the barracks carry on. Boots, heel to wall. Lockers squared. Beds creased. The floors lines painted, polished, and a bait set the tone for a day that has not yet tested voices. The geometry holds, and with it, order. The drill sergeant adjusts the brim of his campaign hat, the way others check a watch. 2 fingers along the crease, a slight pressure at the crown, a habit done not for vanity but for confirmation. The hat is more than felt in cord. It is instruction given shape. Beneath it, eyes sweep without appearing hurried. Nothing escapes them. Not the fold of a blanket, nor the hesitation in a salute. The clipboard rests in his left hand, angled against his thigh. A roster clipped tight to its board waits, in block letters. Names arranged alphabetically, each matched with a number, each number destined to be spoken aloud in a ritual older than any one man. The paper is clean, but its edges curl from being replaced day after day. Beside it hangs a pen on a short length of cord, capped but ready, an extension of authority. He moves into the corridor, where recruits line themselves in 2 ranks. Boots edged the painted stripe with a discipline taught through repetition, not belief. Shoulders square, eyes fixed ahead. Chins tucked to the angle, learned the hard way. The air is thick with detergent from the morning's cleaning, laced faintly with a metallic tang of sweat that no amount of scrubbing hides. Silence holds the formation like a rope. Platoon attention. The command is not shouted, only carried. The boots answered with a single stomp, heels striking the concrete as though the floor itself expected it. Posture locks, hands flatten against trouser seams. A row of chests expand in unison and hold, waiting for the count to begin. He scans the line before calling names. His eyes rest on hairlines just short enough to reveal uneven growth, on belts where brass might lack half a degree of shine, on jawlines that missed a final swipe of the razor. These are not mistakes, yet they are notes. filed mentally, to be recalled later when teaching demands an example. The clipboard rises, the pen hovers, the roll begins. Adams here. Drill Sergeant Baker. Drill Sergeant. The cadence is steady, each name a beat, each response a note in a song of compliance. Voices strain for sameness but betray small details, one too loud in eagerness, another too quiet in uncertainty, one cracked from nerves or from a throat not ready for morning. The sergeant marks none of this visibly. His pen touches the paper only when absence answers instead of presence. Jones' silence. A pause longer than the space allows. Eyes flick but heads do not turn. The sergeant waits half a heartbeat more before the word arrives. Late but present. His pen does not move. His eyes do. Jones feels it before anyone else sees it. The count continues. Names fall into place, each matched with its here, drill sergeant, until the roster has been walked end to end. He lowers the clipboard, tucks the pen into its cord, and lets silence fill the seam between routine and what comes next. 74 present. 1 late response. 0 absent. Noted. The words are plain. Their weight carried by the fact that they have been written in other mornings, other years, by other voices. He taps the corner of the board once against his palm, sealing the ritual. A glance at his watch confirms what the logbook already knows. The hour is exact, the formation on time. He shifts the brim of his hat one final notch and turns, signaling the transition from count to instruction. The recruits hold their posture until told otherwise. The clipboard, now carrying their names as proof of presence, will rest in the office soon. The hat, never resting, continues its silent work. The fog outside begins to lift, pale light seeping into the spaces between buildings. Inside, the count has been made, the roll preserved, the morning marked as orderly. Nothing extraordinary has happened, yet everything has been recorded. Hat, clipboard, names 3 objects that hold a company together before the day decides what tests will matter. He wakes not to the bugle, but to the rhythm of himself. Long before the sergeant's footsteps echo, before the clipboard scratches ink, he has counted the ceiling tiles above his bunk. 12 long, 4 short. A rectangle repeated daily, each seam a small map of order. He does not need an alarm. His body keeps its own ledger. Socks come first, pulled with the precision of someone who believes fabric can betray him. Then trousers, Chris still holding from the iron that hissed last night. The shirt follows. Collar pressed, name tape frayed at one corner but aligned true. He buttons top to bottom. No pause, no hurry. The dog tag lies flat against his chest, cool against skin, the way steel reminds flesh that it is temporary. Over it all, a coat folded square, sleeves pulled until seams match the shoulder. He laces boots, with care that seems excessive to anyone not living under inspection. The knot is practiced, doubled, tucked where no loose end can invite correction. When he finishes, he adjusts them by a fraction. Heel to the bunk frame, toe to the red line painted on tile. The red line does not ask permission. It tells him exactly where he belongs. The wallet comes last. It has traveled with him from bus to bay, through processing lines and medical checks, through meals eaten too fast and nights too short. Leather, cracked at the corners, softened by years of pocket carry. Inside it, the cards most would expect. Identification, bank, one creased transfer from the city he left. But deeper, in the sleeve behind the VA card, rests an envelope flattened to thinness. Within that envelope lives the photograph. He never removes it here, not under eyes that look for weakness. But he touches it, always. A thumb slides against the leather until it finds the outline of paper within. The edges are softened, the corner mended with tape, long since gone the color of tea. It does not bend when pressed, only yields slightly, reminding him it remains. He does not need to see the faces again this morning. Memory is sufficient, yet the weight steadies him. The way a plumb line steadies a carpenter's frame. He moves into the hallway at the measured pace of someone who knows distance can betray more than posture. The cane of another recruit taps ahead, rhythm different but equally binding. The floor hums faintly under pipes warming to the day. He counts steps not allowed, never allowed but by habit. 14 to the latrine, 5 to the sink, 3 to the mirror. Numbers keep order when nerves do not dot in the glass. The shave looks passable. He tilts his chin, checking for defiance hiding in stubble. None remains. He rinses, dries, folds the towel exact, and returns it to its rack. Back down the hallway, steam follows him like a shadow dot at his bunk. He folds the blanket once more. The Chris could pass, but passing is not enough. He presses it flat, palm edge sharp, until it looks machine-made. Then he smooths the pillowcase. centers the pillow under the frame, and straightens Boots again, though they have not moved. Every action is a hedge against the clipboard that will soon arrive. When the call for formation comes, he is ready. Wallet in pocket, photograph steady within, boots aligned, uniform squared. He steps to the red line, eyes front, and waits. To others, he is only one recruit among many, another face in a line of names. To himself, he is a man who carries proof folded thin, waiting for the moment when paper might weigh more than policy. The corridor fills with silence broken only by breath and the shifting of shoulders. He does not move. He measures steps not with legs but with memory, waiting for the count that will call his name and the day that may ask for more. The photograph stays hidden, but it is present, as constant as the line under his boots. The yard is not yet fully awake when the platoon assembles. Fog clinks low, rolling against Boots and disappearing under the bleachers at the far end. The asphalt holds last night's damp, its surface dark and faintly reflective, throwing back the silhouettes of recruits who stand in two precise ranks. Shoulders touch air rather than each other, spacing exact. Each man aware that the first formation is less about numbers and more about posture. A whistle's shrill note slices across the square, not loud enough to echo but sharp enough to bind the moment. Fall in. The call comes from the brimmed hat that cuts through fog, voice measured but heavy with expectation. Boots strike the asphalt in near unison, a rhythm still imperfect, but close enough to sound like obedience. Hands fall to trouser seams, fingers stiffened into blades, heads fixed forward, eyes pinned to a point that does not matter but must not waver. The drill sergeant walks the line as though tracing it into permanence. His boots are heavier than theirs, or perhaps the cadence he keeps makes them sound that way. He stops in front of one recruit, then another, letting silence measure their composure. A chin angled too high earns a correction by glance alone. A belt slightly off-center is met with a low word that cuts deeper than volume. When he halts before the trainee, who measures steps, the fog feels thicker. The brim tilts down until only the sergeant's mouth is visible, a line drawn hard. His eyes remained unseen, hidden shadows under the hat, but the weight of their direction presses clear enough. The clipboard in his hand lifts pen poised. Uniform. The word is clipped, verdict carried in a single syllable. He does not need to explain. Every man in the formation already understands. A thread loose at the name tape. A shine dulled on one boot toe-to-tails, small to any other world, but magnified here into a lesson. The trainee holds still, shoulders square, jaw tight, but not locked. He knows to answer, not argue. Yes, drill sergeant. His voice comes steady. No shake, no plea. The red line painted across the asphalt beneath his boots feels brighter, sharper, as though it too has joined in the inspection. The sergeant leans closer, brim nearly brushing the recruit's forehead. You want to present yourself like that in my formation? The question is not meant for response. It is meant for the silence that follows. The silence that stretches just long enough for the platoon to feel its weight. A laugh bubbles faint from somewhere down the line, then dies quickly, strangled by fear of attention. The pen touches paper. A mark is made. Counseling. Unsatisfactory. Groom. Uniform. The words leave the sergeant's mouth the way a gavel strikes wood. The clipboard captures them in ink, where they will outlive the fog, outlive the morning. The recruit nods once, sharp and small. He does not lower his eyes. The sergeant moves on, boots marking his rhythm again, voice cutting where it must, sparing nothing. The formation remains silent, but the air shifts. Every man knows the rules were not bent today, only enforced with precision. The clipboard will carry the note back to the office. The log will absorb it, and the morning will continue. Still, the friction leaves its mark. The trainee who measures steps feels the weight of the ink already drying against his name. He breathes once, steadying, hand brushing against the wallet tucked deep in his pocket. The photograph inside stays folded, unseen, but its presence steadies the space the clipboard has unsettled. The whistle blows again, short and final. The formation shifts to the next drill, fog still clinging low, as though reluctant to rise until the day decides whether the weight of rules is heavier than the proof a man carries silently in his coat. Above the bay doors, a lens blinks into life with no ceremony. Its red light pulses steady, not fast enough to draw attention, but enough to remind that it is always present. The camera does not clear its throat, does not command posture. It simply watches. Its angle covers the entire formation ground the two ranks of recruits. The drill sergeant's brim, the fog that lingers between boots. It records rectangles and movement. Pixels register boots scuffed against asphalt. The faint shimmer of condensation rising from jackets. The hard shadow line beneath the drill sergeant's hat. The machine knows none of it as humiliation or dignity. Its ledger is numerical. Frame 1, Frame 2, Frame 3. Each second it writes to memory without judgment. When the clipboard's pen scratches a mark, the lens captures the tilt of the sergeant's arm, the stiffened shoulders of the recruit, the line of eyes staring forward and not daring to shift. It saves the moment as footage. Coordinates of bodies, shapes and fog, but it does not understand what settles between them. The silence that makes the air heavier. The sting of laughter bitten short. The unspoken bargain of obedience. The microphone fixed above the door adds its contribution. It hears the whistle's pitch, the word uniform, the reply yes. Drill sergeant. It stores the syllables as sound waves flattened into data, measured in decibels and frequency. It does not hear tone. It does not know whether yes was steady or shaken. It knows only that a vibration traveled air to diaphragm, then into circuitry. Back in the company office, a monitor flickers. A clerk sipping coffee scrolls through camera feeds hallways, motor pool, arms room. On one screen, the formation ground plays out in silence. Recruits aligned, a sergeant's shadow moving between them. The red light assures the recording is complete. The clerk watches for seconds, then moves on. No alarms sound. No rule has been broken in pixels. The recruits do not glance at the lens. They have been told it exists. Warned it remembers. They feel its presence the way a man feels whether pressing on his skin unseen but undeniable. The trainee who measures steps knows it best. He senses its red blink above him, recording his posture as though posture alone were truth. He wonders, briefly, what the footage would show if the wallet came from his pocket. If the photograph bent open against morning air. To the camera, it would be paper, shape, light. It would not feel the weight taped at the corner. The drill sergeant, Brimlow, never looks at the lens. He knows it is there, but his authority does not require its witness. Still, when he writes on the clipboard, his hand tilts slightly, angling the paper as though habit expects oversight. Even authority answers to something it cannot see. The fog thins. The count concludes. Boots shift to march. The camera stores all of its each step, each command, each heel-striking rhythm. Later, the file will live in a server rack cooled by fans, a numbered clip among thousands. If reviewed, it will show a line of men, a mark on a board, the exact timestamp when discipline drew its line. But it will not feel the change that passed through the air when laughter died too quickly, when a man answered steady despite the weight of judgment. The lens does not feel policy or the quiet resolve of someone carrying proof in his pocket. It does not weigh dignity against procedure. It blinks, it records, it forgets nothing except why it mattered. The fog lifts a little higher. The recruits march forward. The camera remains fixed, unblinking, indifferent, its memory filling quietly with evidence of a morning it will never understand. The platoon holds formation, boots squared on the damp asphalt. When the drill sergeant halts his pacing and pivots back toward the trainee who measures steps, the brim dips low, casting a shadow that swallows the recruit's face. Silence stretches long enough for every man in the ranks to hear his own pulse. Then the correction comes, not in anger, but in method. Each word clipped clean and delivered as if spoken from a manual. Unacceptable, presentation unsatisfactory, grooming standard unmet. The words fall like notations, rather than insults. The clipboard rises again, pen tapping the margin before ink presses down. Each stroke is slow, deliberate. Letters cut square across the page. Counseling form initiated. Uniform deficiency observed. It will be filed, it will be signed. And it will live in a folder that outlasts the fog, now curling across the square. The recruit does not flinch. His chin stays level, eyes fixed forward, hands pinned to trouser seams. Still, the weight of procedure presses against him. The humiliation is not the raised voice. It is the certainty that his name is now inked onto paper in a way that feels permanent. Paper does not forgive. Paper records without mercy. The sergeant steps closer, voice lowered so only the nearest ranks can hear. If you can't meet the standard here, how do you expect to meet it when it counts? The words are familiar, spoken countless times to countless men, but they land fresh. Because every man in the formation imagines himself under that brim. He circles once, then turns away. The sound of his boots resumes their heavy cadence, carrying him down the line, past shoulders stiffened and jaws clenched. Each man exhales only when the brim has passed him by. The clipboard lowers slightly, pen hovering, ready for the next infraction to be captured in ink. The camera above the bay door blinks red, saving the moment without caring what it means. Its microphone takes in the sergeant's words and the single, steady yes, drill sergeant that followed. Later, if replayed, it will show nothing more than a correction delivered, a recruit silent, a line holding still. To policy, it will be clean, correct, expected. To the men standing there, it feels heavier, the kind of humiliation that folds into memory, where even years cannot shake it. Loose. The recruit who measures steps breathes once. Quietly, he does not look down. He does not touch the wallet in his pocket, though the urge itches in his hand. The photograph waits inside, folded and taped at the corner, carrying names that matter more than the word honest written in blue ink. But he knows the rules. To pull it out now would not be proof, it would be defiance. And defiance is another line in the ledger, another mark on paper. So he stands still. He accepts the mark made against him, not as truth, but as process. Around him, the fog thins into morning light, the parade field slowly emerging from white into green. A flag stirs faintly on its pole, not yet raised. The formation shifts at command, boots striking as one. And the morning continues as though nothing has happened. In the company office later, the clipboard will rest on the desk. The counseling note will be transferred to a form, initials added, copies made. The green log will note, uniform deficiency counseling issued. The line will appear as neutral, just another entry among dozens. But the man carrying it will remember the fog, the brim, the silence. Humiliation here is not anger or insult. It is the quiet permanence of ink. It is the knowledge that policy does not feel, only records. And it is the certainty that somewhere in a pocket, proof rests folded, waiting for the day when procedure will have to face memory. A platoon breaks from formation and moves in staggered files toward the barracks. The cadence of boots on asphalt dissolves into scattered rhythms. Some brisk, some dragging, all bent toward the shelter of four walls. Inside, bunks wait squared, lockers sealed tight, red lines across the floor gleaming under fluorescent light. Order has been restored, yet the air remains thick, the residue of the morning's correction clinging heavier than fog. The trainee who measures steps returns to his bunk with pace, deliberate, every stride counted in his head. 7 from the door to the frame, 3 to swing around, 1 to hold heel against bed. He sits only for a moment, hands resting flat on thighs, before leaning down to the pocket, where silence keeps what words cannot. The wallet slides free, leather softened by years of palms, its edges darkened, where fingers have lingered too often. It creaks faintly when opened, like a door on hinges too old to protest. The first sleeve carries what any soldier would expect. Identification card, laminated, corners sharp, bank card, embossing worn flat by use, a folded paper with a bus timetable from the town he left behind. These are ordinary things, things no inspection would find fault in. But behind them, pressed deep in the sleeve, rests an envelope shrunk by time, flattened to the thinness of habit. He eases it out, careful not to tear what tape has already mended. The paper inside yields reluctantly, its folds grooved into memory. A photograph emerges black and white, edges yellowed, corner reinforced with tape gone brittle. The image is faint, but clear enough. A row of men in uniform, canvas draped behind them, a vehicle nose painted quick with a stenciled crest. Faces stare not at the camera, but somewhere beyond it, as though interrupted mid-duty. He does not stare long. To him, each crease in the photo is familiar, every shadow known, each figure memorized to the point where his eyes need not confirm them. His thumb brushes the tape at the corner, a gesture done so often it feels like ritual. He turns the photograph over, and there the names sit, written in block letters, by a steady hand, now gone. 3 surnames, a month, a year, a unit line. Below them, smaller script. 1 first name paired with a last that matches his own. A sound outside draws him back, the drill sergeant's voice carrying across the hallway, instructing another group. Words hard but measured. The trainee slides the photo back into its envelope, back into the wallet, back into the pocket, where it always waits. He does not intend defiance, only readiness. The photo is not a shield, but a record. Where ink in a clipboard writes procedure, this paper writes lineage. Coins jingle faintly as he tucks the wallet deep again. 2 quarters, a dime, 3 pennies weight enough to remind him that small things speak when words cannot. He presses the wallet down, closes his palm against his thigh, and exhales through his nose, quiet. Around him, the bay hums with motion. Recruits relace boots, fold blankets again, polished brass fittings already shining. Silence rules more than speech here. Men glance at each other but speak little, each aware that walls are thin and ears are closer than they seem. The red line painted across the tile shines between bunks, untouchable, unbroken. The trainee leans back against his bunk frame, posture upright, eyes fixed forward. The wallet rests against his leg, its weight familiar, its secret folded tight. Outside, the fog thins further, the flag now visible at the pole, still awaiting its rise. Inside, silence holds steady, a silence broken only by coins in a pocket, paper folded thin, and the thought of when proof might be asked to speak for him. The day lengthens into its measured rhythm marches across gravel. Commands carried down ranges, rifles inspected and returned. By afternoon, fatigue has set into the platoon's shoulders, though no one admits it aloud. The sun presses harder than the fog of morning, baking the asphalt square into a surface that reflects heat back at their boots. Yet procedure moves forward without pause. The clipboard holds its pages. The camera above the bay door blinks. Unfeeling. It is during a pause between drills that the moment arrives, quiet and unscheduled. The platoon stands at ease, rifles grounded. When the drill sergeant's gaze hooks once again on the trainee who measures steps, the brim dips, the voice lowers. You think you've got excuses tucked away, do you? The question cuts sideways, sharp enough for the nearest ranks to stiffen. A murmur of unease passes through the formation. Though no one dares break posture, the trainee's hand moves almost before thought, sliding into the pocket where the wallet rests. He withdraws it slowly, deliberately, as though drawing contraband that is not contraband at all. The leather opens in his palm, revealing sleeves of ordinary cards that the sergeant ignores. But from the deepest slot comes the envelope, worn to softness, edges yellowed, tape brittle but holding. He holds it flat, finger steady. Permission to show one item. Drill sergeant. The words are plain, respectful, but charged with weight. Silence follows, long enough for the camera's red light to pulse twice, 3 times. The sergeant tilts his head, a slight motion beneath the brim, then nods once. The trainee unfolds the envelope and draws out the photograph. Afternoon light catches on its gloss, muted now by years of touch. The image breathes into the air. Blackout canvas stretched behind a line of men, the chalked numerals of vehicles, and on the nose panel, a crest stenciled quick, paint uneven but bold. Faces stare at something off-frame, half in shadow, half in determination. The tape at the corner testifies 2 years of survival, pulled from one wallet to another, handled by hands that carried more weight than this formation will ever know. The photo's edges curl slightly, as if reluctant to remain flat after so many folds, yet its message remains square, unbroken. Proof captured in silver laid, not in memory alone. Recruits closest to him glance, though discipline keeps their eyes from lingering. To them it looks like any old wartime print, familiar from classrooms and documentaries. To the trainee, and perhaps to the sergeant, it is something more. The brim lowers closer, eyes narrowing as if the image itself carries a voice. What's this supposed to mean? The sergeant asks, tone sharp but thinner now. The trainee turns the photo once in his hand, then flips it over. On the back, block letters declare 3 surnames, the month, the year, the unit line. Beneath them, smaller handwriting, more personal first names paired with last, and one name that echoes between the 2 men standing in silence. The sergeant's lips tighten. His eyes move once across the names, then back to the recruit's face. The clipboard lowers against his thigh, pen capped without note. Around them, the platoon holds breath, sensing a shift they cannot define. The camera blinks again, recording paper, gesture, silence, but not the current that runs unseen. The photograph remains between them for only seconds more, before it slides back into the envelope, into the wallet, into the pocket where it lives unseen. Yet the air has altered. What was humiliation written as procedure is now joined by something harder to name. Something not caught in ink or footage. The command to resume drills comes, voice steady but edged with thought. Boots, lift, rifle shoulder. The square fills with rhythm again, but in the sergeant's hand, the clipboard feels heavier, as though the paper within it must now contend with a photograph taped at the corners, carried in silence, and shown only when asked for proof. Evening finds the platoon back inside the barracks. Uniforms hung stiff along lockers, boots scrubbed raw against brushes. The day's drills are complete, rifles cleaned, the square left empty save for a flag that sags without wind. In the bay, the fluorescent light hums, constant, indifferent to fatigue, while men move with mechanical quiet folding, sweeping, tightening. Yet, in one pocket, the photograph remains, folded back into its envelope. waiting, as it has waited through years of silence. The trainee sits on the edge of his bunk. He does not remove the wallet immediately. He waits until the others are bent over shoes, or speaking low near lockers. Then his hand slips into the pocket, draws the leather free, and eases the envelope onto his palm. He unfolds it carefully, the way one might unfold orders that can no longer be replaced. The photograph emerges again, corner reinforced with yellowed tape. He does not study the front first. He turns it over. On the reverse, the writing remains stubborn. Block letters, pressed by a pen so many years ago, still cut clear against the paper. 3 surnames. Next to them, a date, a month, a year. Below, a line denoting the unit. Numbers and letters that tie them to an operation frozen now in ink. But beneath those bold strokes, in smaller script, almost delicate, another hand has written, not rank, not duty, not designation. First names, familiar ones, a mark of friendship beyond regulation. One of those names is his father's. Another, his uncle's. The final name is the drill sergeant's, written not as a title, not as SGT, but simply as a man called by friends. The trainee traces the letters with a fingertip, barely grazing the paper. It is proof, not just of service, but of shared ground. The same ground the brimmed hat now commands. The same ground where humiliation was marked against him only hours before. Paper remembers what policy forgets. The sound of boots approaches down the corridor. The photograph slips back into the wallet into the pocket. By the time the drill sergeant steps through the doorway, brim squared, clipboard tucked against his side. The trainee is upright, eyes front, posture exact. The sergeant speaks of cleaning standards, of inspections due tomorrow, of lights-out schedules. His voice carries, as it always does, firm, clipped, designed to hold a room. Yet when his gaze sweeps the line of bunks, it falters for a half-second at one. His eyes linger, not long enough for others to notice, but long enough for recognition to spark where words cannot. He knows the photograph, he knows the handwriting, and he knows his name is there. He does not ask to see it again. He does not acknowledge it aloud. Instead, he shifts the clipboard slightly, pen uncapped, but no notes written. Orders are given, corrections made, then silence returned. He turns, brim catching light, and departs down the hall. The recruit exhales slowly, hands flat on knees. Around him, the bay rustles with the sounds of others settling in. Lockers closing, boots aligning, heel-to-all whispers traded, but soon hushed. Above, the camera continues its red blink, recording the scene with no comprehension. The photograph rests once more in the dark of the pocket. But its presence is louder now than any shouted command. It carries names written by a steady hand, names that bridge years, names that link a sergeant and a recruit across paper more durable than policy. The ink does not fade. The tape at the corner may yellow, the paper may curl, but the names remain. Lights out will come soon. The day will close in the green log, as weather, hours, initials. But in the pocket of one man lies another record unofficial, unfiled, but no less binding. Names on the reverse, memory in ink, and silence heavy enough to be understood without a word. Morning arrives in layers. First with the hiss of pipes carrying hot water to showers, then with a shuffle of boots against tile, and finally with a blast of a whistle that cracks the barracks like glass. The platoon spills into the square, uniforms taut, rifles slung, each man aligning himself to the painted marks set into the asphalt. The fog of yesterday has thinned, leaving the air clear but sharp, every sound cutting further than before. The drill sergeant walks the line, brim lowered, clipboard balanced against his palm. His boots strike in rhythm, a metronome of authority. He calls for inspection, and the recruits stiffen until breath itself feels like an infraction. The camera above blinks red. The clipboard waits. When he halts before the trainee, who measures steps, silence deepens. The brim hovers low, shadowing eyes that weigh everything without revealing themselves. The clipboard lifts, pen uncapped, a familiar ritual. Every man expects the correction to come, another mark written, another lesson drawn. But then the pause holds. It stretches longer than procedure allows. A second, then another. The sergeant's eyes narrow, not at the boots, not at the crease in the trousers, but at the pocket where leather outlines against fabric. He remembers names, inked in another hand, from another year. The brim tilts slightly back. The clipboard lowers. The pen does not move. The platoon feels it immediately. Shoulders locked in posture sense the change without seeing it. Breathing shifts as if the air has grown heavier, as if the square itself waits for words that never come. The silence is not humiliation this time, it is recognition. though no one dares call it that. The trainee does not speak. He does not move. His hand remains at his side, though he feels the photograph's weight more than ever. He does not need to draw it out again. Its presence has already rewritten the moment. Where yesterday brought correction, today brings pause. A space where policy hesitates. The sergeant clears his throat, not loud but enough to snap the formation back to stiffness. Carry on. His voice is flat, neutral, the kind used when judgment has been made but will not be shared. He pivots, boots striking the asphalt again, and resumes his pacing down the line. The clipboard remains lowered, pen still capped. The recruits exchange no looks, no words, but each feels the difference. Something has shifted in the routine that governs them. Inspections usually conclude with notes, corrections, instructions. This one has ended with silence, heavier than any reprimand. The red camera blinks, storing frames of a sergeant who stopped, hesitated, and moved on. Later, if reviewed, the footage will show nothing unusual. A pause, a pivot, a command to carry on. It will not record the recognition in a lowered brim, or the way silence settled into the space where ink should have been. By the time the platoon marches off the square, the moment has folded into routine again. Commands are called, boots align, rifles shoulder. Yet the hour has been rewritten. The recruit feels it in the steadiness of his steps, the absence of ink against his name. The sergeant feels it in the weight of the clipboard, heavier for what it chose not to record. The logbook in the office will mark the day as ordinary, weather clear, formation on time, inspection completed, no mention of pause, no note of recognition. But for those who stood on the square, especially the two bound by names written on the reverse of a photograph, the morning is not ordinary. It is remembered as the hour when silence spoke louder than procedure, when authority and memory met, and when the rules hesitated just long enough for everyone to know they could. Bend. The day moves forward, as though nothing unusual has happened. Orders are called, rifles are drawn, and the platoon marches toward the range with the clatter of boots over gravel. Yet beneath the rhythm lies something altered. The cadence sounds the same, but each man feels a subtle drag, a half-beat slower, as if the morning's pause has settled into their stride. At the firing line, procedure resumes its usual rigor. Ear protection is issued, safety checks are spoken in firm monotone, and the clatter of bolts locking forward echoes in sequence. Targets rise against the sandberm, their shapes blank and waiting. Recruits kneel, prone, or stand by command, rifles aligned, muzzles angled safe. The range officer gives his script. Commands snap out like punctuation. Marks ready, aim, fire. Shots break the air into fragments. Brass casings bounce against gravel. The smell of powder crawls over the line. The drill sergeant moves behind them, brim tilted low, watching every stance, every grip. His clipboard is there, but the pen does not move with its usual frequency. He observes, corrects with a gesture or a short word, but the marks come fewer. The pages remain cleaner. Where yesterday every hesitation became a notation, today the corrections arrive slower, softer, almost measured against something unspoken. The trainee who measures steps fires steady, breath controlled, eyes fixed to sight. His grouping is tight, each round landing near center. When the drill sergeant passes behind him, there is no bark, no note on paper, only a pause, then a nod barely visible, but caught by the recruit's peripheral vision. He does not let his posture change, though the recognition anchors him. Around them, the platoon notices without acknowledging. Men who yesterday braced for sharp words find themselves given silence instead, or corrections delivered without the sting of theater. The weight of training has not lightened, but it feels different, less performance, more instruction. The change is subtle, and perhaps only noticeable, because the absence of noise reveals it. By noon, the recruits move to field drills. Packs are lifted, canteens slosh, and formation spreads into staggered files across open ground. Commands echo, movements are timed, bodies are pushed past fatigue. Still, the tempo remains one fraction slower, as though the sergeant himself is pacing them against an unseen clock. At the chow hall, the difference sharpens. Trays slide along stainless rails, hands scoop portions without choice. Steam rises from pots that smell more of salt than of food. Usually, the sergeant's voice would cut across the tables, issuing corrections even at rest. Today he sits at the end, hat tipped forward, clipboard closed on the table beside him. He eats without comment. When one recruit spills a drink, the silence that follows is heavier than any reprimand. The man cleans quickly, shoulders tight, and no word comes. The lesson lands regardless. In the company office later, the logbook receives its daily notes. Training conducted, range completed, Safety brief given. The handwriting is the clerk's, not the sergeant's, and it records only what policy requires. No mention is made of pace, of silence, of the rhythm altered by memory. By evening, when the platoon returns to barracks, shoulders aching and eyes dimmed by exhaustion, the change lingers. Blankets are folded, boots aligned, rifles locked in racks. The red line across the floor glows under fluorescent light, the same as always. Yet the recruits move a shade slower, a fraction softer, reflecting the cadence set by their instructor. The drill sergeant makes his final round through the bay. His brim remains low, his posture exact, but the clipboard stays at his side. Pen capped, pages still. He leaves with no words, no noise, only the weight of authority tempered by recognition. Training has continued, but it has continued slower by a beat, carrying within it the echo of a pause that changed more than the hour it changed a day. The company office hums differently than the barracks. Its air is cooler, drawn through vents that never sleep. And its silence is not the silence of obedience, but of paper being asked to remember. Desks line the room, in regulation order, metal frames, scuffed drawers, worn smooth by decades of elbows. A flag hangs square behind the first sergeant's chair, its edges still from lack of breeze. The logbook rests open on the desk where the duty NCO left it, green cover bent slightly. The morning's line still fresh, date, time, initials, weather clear. The handwriting looks steady, its ink bold enough to press through the paper. Above it, yesterday's entry sits in contrast. Fog noted, counseling recorded. What had been humiliation on the square now lives only as blue ink on paper. Factual, drained of feeling. The first sergeant arrives with his usual rhythm steps, precise. Cap squared, expression unreadable. He removes the logbook from its place, scans the morning line, and then turns the page back. His eyes pause on the notation. Counseling insat. Groom uniform. The words carry no tone. No brimmed hat leaning close. No silence stretched thin over a line of recruits. They are plain, procedural. Yet he lingers, pen already in hand. Margins on the page are narrow but sufficient. In blue ink, smaller than the primary note, he writes, discretion. When ID is memory honor, IT temp. His pen strokes are slower than the duty clerk's. Each letter deliberate, as if tested against future review. The words do not erase the earlier line, but they change its weight. A directive has entered the record, not official enough to become doctrine, not vague enough to be ignored. The clerk sitting at the corner desk looks up, waiting for instruction. The first sergeant closes the logbook, taps its cover once with the back of his pen, and says, file it as read. The order is simple, but the meaning is clear. The note remains, the margin remains, and both will be preserved behind him. Cabinets hold folders marked with names, dates, and numbers. Each folder is a history reduced to paper. Performance reviews, counseling forms, commendations, infractions. They do not carry the weight of silence or pause, only lines of text. Yet today, one folder will contain something more, a memory hinted at in ink. Recorded not as reprimand, but as discretion. The drill sergeant steps into the office not long after. His brim comes off, hung on the peg near the door. Clipboard in hand, he sets it on the desk. Its pages filled with marks from the week. The first sergeant glances at him once, then back at the logbook. No words about the photograph are spoken. None are needed. The margin note has already done its work. Outside, the company moves toward evening drill, their boots audible through the office walls. The rhythm is steady, the cadence called sharp. Paper inside the office, however, tells a different rhythm, slower, deliberate, altered by memory. The camera may record formations. The clipboard may collect marks, but the logbook is where decisions settle. Its pages are not erased. They are amended, guided by margins and the ink of someone willing to add what procedure does not account for. When the first sergeant finishes his note, he caps the pen, closes the logbook, and places it back at the desk's center. The desk lamp reflects faintly off its cover, turning the green surface darker. The office falls silent again, waiting for tomorrow's line. Outside, recruits continue their training, unaware that their morning has been rewritten, not on the square, but in the narrow space of a margin. A note in blue ink, barely more than a whisper on paper, carries weight equal to any command shouted across asphalt. And though few will ever see it, it remains, binding memory to record, discretion, honor, temporary but lasting enough to shape the day that follows. The mess hall lights hum above long rows of tables, their glow falling across trays stacked at the entrance. Stainless counters reflect movement in pieces, boots, hands, faces but never whole. A recruit detail works. The serving line, ladling stew, sliding bread, setting cartons of milk onto trays. The rhythm is steady. Scoop, set, slide. Noise builds and settles. Not chaotic, but layered voices. Utensils against metal. The scrape of chairs shifted by habit more than need. The drill sergeants stand near the front, eyes watching more than they eat. Their trays hold the same food, but sit untouched while recruits file through. Silence is not ordered, but recruits choose it anyway, speaking in low tones or not at all. The hall carries weight. The kind learned quickly that mealtime belongs to the clock, not conversation. At one table, the recruit who had been singled out earlier takes his seat. His tray is neat, bread set square, spoon aligned. Around him, others adjust their posture, as if his presence has drawn invisible lines across the table. They do not speak to him, yet they do not abandon him either. Shared meals hold rules older than the army. You sit together, even if silence makes the sitting heavy. In the kitchen office, a civilian clerk balances the day's ration book. Numbers are written in black ink, each line precise. Potatoes issued, milk cartons accounted, bread loaves reconciled against head count. At the bottom margin, the clerk notes, recruit detail performed SAT. The word SAT means satisfactory, no more, no less. Behind it lies the unseen truth. The detail worked without complaint, moved food from crate to tray, kept the line flowing. The first sergeant enters quietly, retrieves the ledger, and signs initials in the acknowledgement box. His eyes linger on the margin, then move to the next page, where tomorrow's rations wait as numbers on paper. Before leaving, he adds a small line in blue ink, just above the clerk's note. Conduct improves in mess. Temp. It does not erase what happened on the square earlier. It does not celebrate. It observes, quietly, that the same recruit who faltered under inspection has steadied in another place, where trays and bread become proof of work done right. Back in the hall, trays clatter less as the meal progresses. The noise thins. 2 spoons scraping bowl, chair legs shifting, boots lining themselves beneath benches. A drill sergeant walks the aisle, his brim shadowing eyes that see everything but announce little. He stops briefly behind the recruit who had been corrected in front of all that morning. The recruit eats without looking up. No comment comes. The brim passes on. Silence itself becomes allowance. Recruits finish in sequence, rising by tables. Trays return to bins. Silverware. 2 tubs of water. The line at the dish pit builds and shrinks. Each step another proof of order. Steam rises, carrying the smell of soap mixed with metal. A corporal checks the stack and makes a note on his clipboard. Numbers, not names. When the hall empties, the recruit detail returns to mop floors and wipe tables. Chairs are aligned back under benches. Mop water run gray. The drill sergeant supervising makes no correction, offers no word, only nods once at the clean rows. That nod is not recorded in any ledger, but the recruits who see it carry it out of the hall. In the office, the ration book closes, ledger balanced, margin noted. Blue ink holds what voices do not. That conduct can be measured not only by creases and collars, but by trays stacked square and tables cleaned without being told twice. The day has not been redeemed, but it has been amended. And in the quiet after chow, when the hum of fluorescence is louder than voices, the margin note remains small, blue, temporary proof that even humiliation can be rewritten by work done without complaint. The barracks glow with a different kind of order once chow is done. Fluorescents stretch down the ceiling in even intervals, their hum constant, their light unflinching. Metal bunks line both sides of the bay, green wool blankets folded at precise angles. White sheets tucked until they could cut fingers. Boots sit in pairs, at attention on the floor, their polish dulled by the day's dust. Lockers stand closed, each latch tested earlier, each lock aligned so the row looks like one piece of steel. Recruits move quietly now, less from command than from fatigue. Some polished boots, circles small and practiced, the cloth in hand blackened with work. Others write letters on government tissue paper, sentences kept short, words pressed hard enough to indent the page. One turns pages of a field manual, eyes scanning more for appearance than memory. The air smells of soap, leather, and the faint starch of uniforms cooling on racks. The drill sergeant enters without calling attention. His brim catches the overhead light, shadowing his face but not his presence. The base stiffens anyway. No command is given, yet backs straighten, boots pause, pens stop mid-sentence. He walks the aisle slowly, eyes sliding over bunks, boots, blankets. The sound of his steps fills the silence. Rubber soles against concrete, polished by years of repetition. He stops at the bunk of the recruit who had stood on the square that morning. humiliated for uniform and bearing. The blanket on this bed is tight, hospital corners exact, pillow aligned, boots gleam more honestly than they had at first formation. The locker door sits closed, lock centered, nothing jutting out to draw rebuke. The drill sergeant says nothing. His hand touches the top of the blanket once, pressing down just enough to test resistance. The corner holds. His eyes move to the boots, then to the rifle. Propped at its assigned angle, he taps the rifle stock lightly with a knuckle, not disapproving, not approving, just measuring. Across the bay, recruits watch without watching. Their eyes pretend to stay fixed on tasks, but attention tilts toward the bunk at the aisle's center. They hear the silence more than they see the hand. Silence, in this place, carries weight equal to orders. The drill sergeant steps back, glances once at the recruit, who stands beside his bunk at attention. No words pass. The brim tips by a fraction acknowledgement, without praise, and then moves on. Boots resume polishing. Pens scratch letters again. Field manuals turn another page. The bay exhales slowly. Permission granted without being spoken. At the duty desk in the corner, the clerk notes the time in the barracks log. 2020. Hours bay inspection sat. He does not mention the silence, the tap of knuckles, the brim's fractional tilt. Paper records only the outcome, not the manner. Still, the line is true enough. Satisfactory. When lights out approaches, recruits climb into bunks, boots aligned, rifles secured. The overhead fluorescents click off in sequence, replaced by the low red glow of night lamps. Darkness takes on its own order. Shapes of bunks, visible but softened. Silence firmer. The only sounds left are breathing, a cough, a boot creak in a dream. The drill sergeant leaves without another glance back. The barracks hold their order, the log holds its line, and the recruit who had been humiliated in the morning rests under a blanket pulled square, knowing silence can be as heavy as reprimand, and sometimes just as binding. The day closes without ceremony, but not without record. Evening folds itself into the training ground with more patience than the day showed. The parade square, empty of formations, looks wider now, its paint lines dulled to pale streaks under fading light. The gravel track around it holds the last prints of boots, edges blurred where dust has begun to settle. Beyond the wire, the tree line leans forward in silhouette, a reminder that the world outside drills at a different pace. Floodlights rise on tall poles, not yet switched on, waiting for full dark to claim its ground. Their metal frames hum faintly, current ready. The bleachers stand unused, boards gray with age, a chalk mark left by some past class, still faint on the front rail. A cadence shouted earlier lingers only in memory, the echo swallowed by air that cools with each passing minute. The drill sergeant arrives first, clipboard under his arm, brim steady. He walks the square without recruits, steps measured the same as if the formation was still here. His boots crunch gravel at the edges. His eyes trace lines as though confirming that paint has not moved. He stops at the spot where this morning's inspection took place. The ground bears no mark of it, no chalk, no tape, only memory. He looks at it anyway, holding his gaze for a beat longer than routine. The recruits come after, file by file, quieter than they had been at dawn. They carry rifles at port arms, muzzles pointed skyward, slings tight against shoulders. The weapons are empty, chambers cleared, but the weight is real enough. They line on the edge of the square, ranks straightening by instinct. No order is shouted. The rhythm of the day has taught them where to stand. The drill sergeant lifts the clipboard, checks the roll, and lowers it again. Weapons drill, he says, voice flat, tone neither sharp nor forgiving. The recruits obey, rifles moving in arcs of steel and wood, muzzles aligned like a metronome, marking time. Present arms, order arms, sling. Unsling the sequence practiced, until muscle remembers faster than thought. One recruit falters, barrel tilted, sling twisted half a turn. It is not the same one who stood humiliated this morning. The mistake draws no spectacle. A single correction is given, not shouted, only stated. Square your sling. The recruit obeys, silence filling what once would have been lecture. The dusk deepens. A breeze stirs dust into a thin veil, catching the low sun in orange streaks. The rifles move through it, silhouettes sharper than before. Each clack of metal against stock sounds louder in the cooling air. At the far edge, the recruit from this morning holds his rifle steady, grip correct, sling flat, muzzle aligned. His movements match the rest, no hesitation, no error. The drill sergeant sees it, notes it, writes nothing. Some recognition does not need ink. From the office nearby, the clerk at the window watches the drill. He jots a line in the evening ledger. 1900 hours weapons drill. Performance improved. He does not specify names. The ledger does not carry humiliation or recovery. It carries fact. Floodlights blink on, filling the ground with stark white. Shadows sharpen. Rifles gleam at their edges. Uniforms cut darker shapes. The drill sergeant calls halt. Rifles ground. Recruits step back in unison. Formation holding silence. Dismissal comes without flourish. Boots scatter. Gravel. Rifles sling to shoulders. Recruits file back toward the barracks. In the last light, the drill sergeant remains a moment longer, clipboard tucked, brim low. He looks once more at the spot where morning began, then turns toward the office. The square empties. Floodlights hum steady. Dust settles again. The training ground holds both the morning's sharpness and the evening's correction, balanced in silence. No paint records it, only memory does. The day eases toward night with small rituals that matter more than their size. After drill and chow, after boots have been stacked and rifles secured, the company gathers in the corridor outside the orderly room. The air smells faintly of polish and dust. Fluorescents buzz overhead, casting a flat light that leaves no shadows deep enough for secrets. Recruits lean against walls or stand rigid, waiting for a name to lift the routine into something personal. The clerk behind desk sorts envelopes with the slow precision of habit. Each letter is checked against a roster, initials written in the margin of the log. Packages are small plain cardboard, wrapped in tape, most from home, some from stores far away. The stack grows smaller until voices replace paper. Each name spoken into the hallway like a brief reprieve. Johnson, the clerk calls, and a hand rises. Ramirez, another step forward. Collins, boots scrape. A letter is taken. The line shortens. Each name called is met with movement. Each absence of a name with silence. Recruits whose families write often tuck envelopes carefully into pockets. Others watch without reaction, already used to the pause that follows no call. The recruit who had been humiliated in mourning. Inspection waits near the end of the line. His face gives nothing away, his posture exact. The brim of a drill sergeant passes once, pausing briefly, as if to measure patience. When the clerk reaches the bottom of the stack, one envelope remains creased at the edges, its corner taped where paper had begun to split. The handwriting is careful. Block letters pressed by someone who has written them many times before. Whitaker, the clerk says, voice plain. The recruit steps forward, accepts the envelope with a nod, and signs the logbook. The pen presses harder than necessary, the ink showing through the thin paper of the form. He tucks the envelope flat against his chest, not opening it yet, as if waiting for a place where reading can be done without witness dot around him. Recruits already slit their envelopes, paper torn open against lockers, laughter surfacing where words from home break the barracks silence. Some fold sheets twice, and slide them into shirt pockets. Others read once, then read again, lips moving without sound. The corridor holds both noise and quiet, overlapping but never colliding. The drill sergeant lingers by the door, clipboard under one arm. His eyes flicked once toward the recruit with the taped envelope, then away. He does not ask, does not command. He lets the moment stay in the recruit's hands. Recognition is not written in reports, it is carried in silence. Later, in the bay, bunks glow under single reading lamps, clipped to head, pages rustle, pens scratch responses. Some recruits write quickly, eager to send words back. Others hesitate, sentences stalled by what should be said and what should not. The hum of electricity mixes with the faint scrape of boots, set into order for morning. At his bunk. Whitaker opens the envelope carefully, sliding a finger under the taped corner so it does not tear. The letter inside is folded twice, edges worn. He reads without shifting posture, eyes tracing lines slowly, lips unmoving. When he finishes, he folds it back along the same creases, smoothing the paper flat against his thigh. He slips it behind a photograph in his wallet, aligning the edges, making the paper part of something older. The duty clerk, seated at the desk near the bay door, writes one more line into the evening log. 2100 hours mail call, all delivered. The words are neutral, unremarkable. The ledger records the act, not the weight it carried. But the envelope remains, taped corner and all. Proof that even in a place of shouted orders and rigid drills, some corrections arrive quietly, folded, written in another hand. The bay grows still. Lamps click off one by one. Letters rest in pockets, under pillows, inside lockers. Silence folds around them. Not empty, but occupied. The day ends the way it began, written into logs, carried by paper, waiting for the next line. The barracks do not sleep all at once. Lights out silences voices, but but the duty roster keeps bodies in motion. At 2,200 hours, the first pair of recruits step into the corridor for firewatch. Rifles slung but empty, brassards on sleeves marked fireguard in black stencil. Their boots sound louder in the quiet, heels striking concrete meant to echo. The bay behind them sinks into breathing rows of bunks aligned. Blankets squared, heads turned toward dreams or the ceiling's red glow. The logbook at the duty desk opens again. The clerk who had managed mail call earlier now shifts posture, pulls his chair closer, writes the new line, 2,200 fireguard posted Smith, Washington. His pen scratches steady. The letter's practiced. The book does not care who sleeps or who watches. Only that both are accounted for. Down the hallway, the recruits walk their first circuit. The armory door receives its glance. The fire extinguisher its check. The latrine its quick inspection for leaks or smoke. Their rifles hang inert. Ceremonial weight against fatigue. They return to the desk, nod once, and continue. Rounds repeat until the clock moves slow enough to be noticed. Inside the bay, the old recruit Whitaker lies awake, though no one would know. The letter from mail call rests under his pillow, its crease pressed flat against fabric. He does not unfold it now. He counts breaths, ceiling lights shifting slightly as eyes adjust to dark. Around him, bodies turn, bunks creak, silence repairs itself. At the desk, the duty clerk makes another note, 2230 all secure. He pauses, pen tip resting at the margin. For a second he considers adding more, something about conduct improving. About the recruit who now lies steady after a morning of humiliation. Instead he lifts the pen, sets it down, and lets silence do the recording. The drill sergeant makes his late pass through at 2,300. Boots heavy, brim low, clipboard underarm. He signs the log with initials, not bothering with commentary. His eyes sweep the bay once, pausing at bunks in turn, but never lingering long enough to be noticed by the sleepers. At Whitaker's bunk he slows, sees the posture rigid, even in rest, but moves on. The brim dips toward the exit. The door closes without sound. Hours crawl. At midnight, new fireguards replace the first. Their names are inked into the log with the same precision. Fireguard posted Davis Nguyen. They rub eyes, shoulders hunched, but the walk begins just the same. Armory, extinguisher, latrine, return. The ledger grows by inches. The night accounted for in lines. In the barracks bay. Breaths remain steady. Boots remain lined. Rifles locked. The hum of the building blends with the hum of thought in the few still awake. Whitaker turns once, quietly, and the silent creak of the bunk carries farther than he expects. A recruit to bunks overshifts in response. Then both return to stillness. By 02000, the log carries 6 lines, each the same, each necessary. A pattern emerges, names hours. Checks complete. What is absent is recorded too. No incidents, no alarms, no smoke. The absence becomes its own entry, silent but recognized. When 0400 arrives, the last watch ends. The clerk writes the final night line, 040 OFIRE. Guard complete note instance. He closes the logbook softly, as if not to wake the bay. Outside the horizon is still black, but inside, the day has begun again in ink. Reveille waits in the bugle, in the voice that will soon shatter silence. For now, the night rests closed between green covers, written in steady lines, remembered not for noise but for absence. A day that began with humiliation is measured in order, and the ledger impartial carries both. The bugle cracks through the dark before the sun can. Its brass tone stretches across the barracks, a sound sharper than dreams, drawing every recruit from bunks in one practiced wave. Boots hit the floor almost in unison, blankets fold, sheets tighten. The red night lamps fade under the fluorescents that flicker on, flattening every shadow into pale order. The duty clerk, already at the desk, opens the logbook with hands that know the first line must come before coffee. The pen touches paper, blue ink flowing steady. 0500, Reveille weather, cool, clear. The page turns its weight forward. Another day added to the long column of days. In the bay, recruits dress quick, shirts tucked, trousers bloused, belts cinched until metal catches metal, boots laced tight, knots yanked once, twice. Rifles are drawn from racks, bolts checked, chambers inspected. The air fills with the smell of leather, gun oil, starch. Orders have not been shouted yet, but the rhythm has already begun. Whitaker stands with them. Motions exact, rifle lifted without pause. His face shows nothing beyond the routine. But inside he feels the weight of the letter still tucked safe, folded into the photograph in his wallet. He does not touch it now. He does not need to. Its presence steadies his hands, his posture, his breath. The drill sergeant enters. Brim low, clipboard, underarm. His eyes sweep the line of bunks. Then the recruits who stand ready. Silence holds longer than usual, the brim tilting slightly toward one bunk, then another. No correction comes. His boots strike the floor twice, a signal, and the platoon files out. On the square, morning air cuts sharper than yesterday. The sun has not cleared the tree line yet, but its light makes the sky pale. Flags stir in faint wind. Gravel crunches beneath boots. The formation holds steady. Rows exact, rifles angled alike. The drill sergeant calls cadence short, clipped, but less edged than before. The recruits follow, their voices low but aligned. Boots striking the same rhythm. Inspections follow as they always do. Collars checked, boots studied, rifles held forward. The clipboard lifts, pen For some, notes are written, creases missed, dust caught in seams, hairline out of regulation. But when the brim stops before Whitaker, the clipboard does not rise. The sergeant looks once at boots, once at rifle, once at the man himself. He pauses, silent long enough for the camera's red bead above the office to blink twice. Then he moves on. The log in the office records the inspection as routine. 0600 uniform equip check, sat, nothing more. No name singled, no counseling marked. Paper holds only procedure, not the silence that stretched longer than correction. Yet the recruits know. They felt the pause, the breath held. The brim lowered, then lifted without sound. Marching resumes. Boots strike in cadence. Rifles bounce lightly with each step. The sun climbs, washing the square in gold that makes even dust glow. Yesterday's hesitation. The photograph shown. The names written on its back hole remain unspoken, but they travel in the rhythm of the formation. Each recruit senses it, though none turn to look, none whisper. Silence has taught them that knowledge can move without words. Back in the bay. Blankets are retightened. Lockers closed. Boots set back into order. The duty clerk closes the logbook, after writing the line for chow. 0700 breakfast conducted. The pen rests. Capped. Margin empty. Another day has started. Another page turned. Whitaker sits at his bunk a moment longer. Hands flat on knees. Breath even. He knows reveille will come again tomorrow. And the next day. Each one written the same in blue ink. But this morning has been different. The humiliation of before has thinned into silence. And silence has reshaped the day more than reprimand ever did. The log records only the outline. Memory fills the rest. By mid-morning the company is already outside the wire. Boots sinking into dirt softer than asphalt. Packs weigh heavier than they did on the square. Straps biting shoulders. Canteens knocking against belts in rhythm with each step. Rifles rest slung tight. Barrels catching sunlight in brief flashes as the line snakes across uneven ground. Dust lifts with every footfall, hanging just long enough to settle on collars and caps. The drill sergeants walk the flanks, brims low, eyes sharp. Their clipboards do not follow. There is no desk out here, no place for ink to settle. Corrections are spoken plain and short. Close your interval. Shift left. Keep your muzzle up. The field march writes its own ledger, in dust and breath, not in paper margins. Whitaker marches steady, steps measured, rifle correct. The weight on his back is no less than the others, but his posture holds, as if balanced by something unseen. The photograph and Thelator ride with him, tucked flat in the wallet against his chest. But he does not reach for them. He feels them anyway, pressed there like another layer of uniform. The march halts at intervals. Recruits drop to one knee, rifles leveled across dirt, eyes scanning tree lines for threats that are not there. Commands are called advance, cover, bound. They rise, move forward, drop again. Sweat runs down necks. Uniforms darkened at the spine. The drill sergeants watch, correcting less than usual. Out here, mistakes correct themselves when a man stumbles under his own pack. At one halt. A recruit falters, sling twisted, barrel pointed wrong. A sharp voice snaps his name, orders him to square it. He obeys, flustered, eyes down. Silence follows. But it is a silence different from humiliation on the square. It is procedural, functional, already forgotten by the time the next command moves the line forward. Whitaker's turn comes to cover a bound. He drops, rifle firm, eyes steady on a line of brush, 30 meters out. The sun burns across his cheek, but his posture holds. The drill sergeant passes behind him, boots crunching dry grass. There is no bark, no clipboard raised, only a pause, one heartbeat longer than necessary. Then the boots move on. That pause, like the one on the square, says enough. The company reaches the rally point by noon. Packs come off. Canteens empty fast. Helmets lifted just enough to cool foreheads. The drill sergeants stand apart, speaking low between themselves, not shouting over the recruits. Orders are given for security. Sectors assigned. The formation spreads in a ring. The ground becomes temporary camp. Rifles laid across knees. Eyes still outward. The duty clerk back at the office writes the day's note in the green. Log. 1000 Field March. EXER complete. The words are neutral. Lines, simple. He has not seen the dust, the sweat, the pauses that carried meaning. Paper cannot hold what ground remembers. But the entry still binds the day to record. By the time the company marches back. Boots are gray with dust. Uniforms stained. Voices hoarse. They file through the gate. Brims watching. Silence heavier now from fatigue. Packs hit the barracks floor with dull thuds. Rifles are stacked. Canteens refilled. The drill sergeant's clipboard reappears. Notes taken only on logistics headcount. Gear condition. No casualties. Whitaker sits on his bunk. Pulls off boots. Dust settling at his feet. Around him. Men groan. Stretch. Laugh quietly, at nothing in particular. The photograph remains untouched in his pocket. Its presence steady. No less real for being unseen. Out on the march. Silence had spoken again. Corrections, given sparingly. Pauses heavy enough to count. The log will show only that the field exercise was complete. The recruits will remember the weight, the dust, and the unwritten rule that has begun to shape them. Sometimes silence corrects more than words, and sometimes a pause holds more weight than a page full of ink. Evening returns slow, the way it does after field days. The barracks bay smells of sweat, dust, and polish, all layered under the faint starch of uniforms hung to dry. Boots rest at attention on the floor, their edges dulled gray by miles of march. Rifles lean against racks, bolts cleaned and wiped. The hum of fluorescent lights mixes with a low scrape of brushes and cloth. Each recruit repairing what the day has worn down. At his bunk, Whitaker moves methodically. He pulls the wallet from his pocket, not hurried, not furtive. The leather opens to the taped-edge envelope, corners soft, tape yellowed, but holding. He does not draw it out immediately. He lets it rest in his palm, thumb pressing against its familiar weight. Around him, other recruits notice in peripheral vision but say nothing. In a place where silence often binds, no one asks. Finally, he slides the photograph free. The front shows what it always has. Blackout canvas, stenciled crest, faces turned toward a horizon they never saw. The image is softened by years, but not erased. He flips it to the reverse. Names stare back. Ink pressed deep into the paper block, letters bold. Smaller handwriting curved beneath. His father's name, his uncle's, and the drill sergeant's written not as rank, but as man among friends. Whitaker studies it longer than usual. The light from the bunk lamp falls across the page, catching the indentations where a pen pressed harder than ink could show. He traces one name with his fingertip. Not speaking, not needing to. Around him, recruits polish boots, fold clothes, write letters. They see, but they do not intrude. The sound of boots in the corridor breaks the moment. The drill sergeant enters. Brim low, clipboard tucked. The base stiffens, backs straightening, hands stilling. Whitaker does not move. The photograph remains in his hand, not hidden, not displayed, simply present. The sergeant's boots strike the floor slow as he walks the aisle. He passes bunks, eyes scanning corners, blankets, rifles. When he stops before Whitaker, silence folds tighter. His gaze drops, and the photograph meets it. The brim dips lower, shadow deepening, eyes unreadable. Seconds stretch. The clipboard remains at his side, pen capped. Whitaker does not offer words. He does not snap to attention, does not try to explain. The paper speaks without sound. It carries weight heavier than any correction. Heavier than the ledger in the office. Heavier than the clipboard under brim. The drill sergeant lifts his eyes at last. He studies Whitaker's face. Then the photograph once more. A small motion follows, barely a nod, but enough to register across the bay. He steps back, pivots, and continues his walk. The photograph is neither confiscated nor dismissed. It remains in the recruit's hand, permitted by silence. At the duty desk. The clerk notes the time. 2000 BAY inspection complete. No detail added. No mention of paper exchanged or gazes held. The log records the hour as ordinary. But every recruit in the bay knows the moment will not be forgotten. When the sergeant leaves, the room exhales in unison. Boots scrape softly as tasks resume. Whitaker folds the photograph back into its envelope, slides it into his wallet, and tucks it flat against his chest. The tape at the corner holds, though frayed. Later, as lights dim and bunks settle into stillness, the photograph remains there, an object now witnessed not only by one man, but by a room full of recruits. Its weight has shifted. It is no longer just proof carried in a pocket. It is a shared silence, understood by many. Written nowhere, but remembered in every breath that followed the brim's nod. The ledger will never show it. The log will not name it. But the photograph has resurfaced, and the company will carry its silence forward. As sure as reveille will sound, come morning.